Hi everyone, I'm Josh. Welcome to Strange Adventures. Today we're going to be talking about losing characters, the death of characters, what it means to me, what it means to a game, whether you're a player or a GM, and well, now that I've lost a very important character to me, what I think about that, and especially as it's someone I put a lot of effort into and had a lot of fun playing as. So before we do that though, I am going to tell you about Leech, which is a new game that I am GMing. You saw maybe a video that I did last week about the beginning of it. Now it's episode 1's done, and it was it was so dark, it was so rough on the characters, and I loved it. It was perfect, and I cannot wait to play. We're doing it on Table Story every Saturday at 9 p.m. UK time, and I guess you can Google whatever that is in your own time, or there's a YouTube channel where you can pick it up. But it is, it's something else, and they're all new to VTM, so they're discovering as they play, and I am really going to enjoy torturing them and showing them weird stuff that vampires can do. Anyway, the death of Shuichi Saito was a pretty big deal to me. It came at a point in Sounds of Silence, or wait, what was it? Silence of Shadows? I don't know anymore. That was pretty pivotal in specifically one of the main players' I guess stories, and I guess that's one of the favorite things that I have about this event, is that not only was it my character's death in a really unpleasant, desperate way, it was also the death of another character who was partially Saito's fault that Camille died. It's also partially Ava's fault in some ways, because we didn't try to save her, and there were lingering elements of respect and friendship between the characters there that just weren't strong enough to overpower the self-interest in a vampire story. I think often that can be a pivotal moment where you as a player and playing your character decide whether self-interest is worth it to see horrible things happen to other players' characters. Well, hopefully not the players, but you know what I mean. And I was thinking about this afterwards, and I was really emotional. I was like genuinely sad that my character had died, because I wanted to play Saito more. I really loved getting into that character, doing the kind of spooky, dark, brooding thing, as well as progressing his objectives. He was an anarch. He believed in the anarch cause. He was also a plant for an ancient Methuselah who gave him all this power, and he didn't quite know what to do with it, and he was interested in learning more, but also maybe felt that the power that he was given was perhaps tainted, or came from a place that genuinely didn't hold the same values that he did, and so he eventually decided to fight against it, and that is what got him killed. He decided to bite off more than he could chew, went in too deep, and eventually got diablerized by Sybil. Like, there's in this book here, as well as the notes for this video, are a whole bunch of character in character and out of character scribblings from the entirety of that show. Like, this is the moment where he first heard the name of the really old vampire that killed him eventually, and he was getting visions and he didn't know what it was. Maybe he was taken control of. Maybe he was he tapped into something without someone else's knowledge, and he was God, what's the word? Intrigued, I think, is probably the best word for it. He was intrigued by it, and he just kept on pulling that string, and eventually he found what was at the end of it, and it killed him. And this is, in a grander sense, what I've been thinking about is Saito's dead now, but the campaign is still going. The questions that he was asking, that I was asking, the GM, and I think this would be the same whether I was GMing or whether I was playing, still happen. They still affected the story, and now that a player character, which is I would argue more monumental than an NPC death, has changed the course of the story, because if Saito had stayed alive, he probably would have meddled in more stuff and messed with more people. But now that he's dead, that's stopped. And unlike a video game, if you're playing The Witcher, you just restart. But even though resurrection is a thing in D&D, there's still narrative progress in that. And I think I'm having a really hard time thinking of examples aside from maybe XCOM, which isn't quite the same level of narrative depth for a character at the very least. When one of your soldiers dies in XCOM, you keep going. The fight to save the Earth is still ongoing, and there's a memorial for them, yes. And the loss of their abilities, the loss of their comradeship, maybe less so, has affected your team, but the fight still goes on. And you have to keep on asking the questions like, how am I going to fight this kind of enemy now that my sniper is dead? Whereas in a role-playing game, in a tabletop role-playing game, you're still asking the questions, well, what happened to the things that that character cared about? What happened to the Anarchs now that Saito's dead? He was a major player, so they're probably weakened in some sense. What happens to Sybil's plans? Well, he was a major player, but he was also a means to an end. Is that the end of that? Is there anyone that will take up his I guess the space that he left? Are the things that he cared about lost? Are they saved? Because he wasn't a hero. If it was a hero, most likely his death would be heroic. If you're playing D&D, if your cleric dies, it's probably for the cause of the god or the community that they serve, and that death would somehow positively impact the community that they went to, or maybe in a point of real difficult conflict, their death would mean that the party falls short, would mean that I guess whatever encounter you die in, whatever gets you killed, acid, I don't know, is too much for them to fight, and so evil prevails in some sense. And I think that possibility, not necessarily of death, because I'm not going to say that all role-playing games have to have the possibility of death. Every role-playing game doesn't have to have the possibility of death, but they do have to have the possibility of failure. And death is just another failure consequence, I think, which is why the story keeps on going. Unless it's the end of your campaign, but I think definitely Saito died in the middle of a campaign, so that's more where my head is at. You fail in the middle of a campaign, things get worse. The evil spreads to more of the land in an epic D&D campaign. In Vampire, in Silence of Shadows, the Anarchs get weaker, the Camarilla gets stronger, and Sibyl's plans are progressed. And you have to keep on asking these questions that player was asking, that character was asking, and then see the, I suppose, final result of those. I've written so many things about this. I've been trying to do this video for a couple of months, and it's been really difficult because death in role-playing games is, I would say, relatively rare from my experience. You obviously spend more time alive than you do dead as a character. And trying to find comparisons in other media leads me more towards books or maybe TV shows, where often if the director or writer is trying to make something more dramatic, a main character will die so that there's a twist, there's something else that keeps going because of their death. So it's kind of a negative space sort of narrative element where it leaves more questions for you to answer. And while I've been playing role-playing games, I have discovered in my relatively short tenure as a role-playing nerd, questions are the bread and butter of role-playing games. You play to answer questions like, how will we defeat the evil? How will we save the people? How will we attain power? How will we drink blood this night? That sort of thing. Questions just keep on coming up. I have been lucky enough that every time a character that I've been playing dies, the GM that I've been playing with has been good enough to think about these questions of what happens next, even though that character isn't there. Because failure can still be fun when you're playing. I was definitely frustrated when Saito died. I definitely wanted to continue playing him. I was like, oh man, I want to do more blood magic. Oh, I want to do more brooding. But that's where he ended. And I am so happy, and I have so many more questions than I ever did while I was playing him. And that is a fun thing to do. And if it ever stops being fun, then I guess maybe resurrect the player. I guess that's another question, like entirely unrelated to this whole rambling thesis that I've been going on here. If your player wants to keep playing that character, I guess more contrived resurrection stuff. This video was sponsored by my patrons, and one in particular, Leon Cornelius, who asked the question, how do you walk away from a character death, especially one like Saito? And I guess it's ask more questions is something I've been saying a lot during this video, and I would like to dedicate this video to his husband, Farok, who unfortunately died on the 1st of August 2020. So our condolences as a community go out to Leon, and thank you very much for your support. Thank you everyone for watching. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, have a nice day.